We've got an update on a story we brought you yesterday. Former Vice President Mike Pence was pressed by a voter in Iowa earlier this week about his decision to certify the 2020 election results back on January the 6th, 2021. Here again is that exchange.
If it wasn't for your vote, we would not have Joe Biden in the White House. That was a constitutional right that you had to send those votes back to the states.
States conduct our elections. You never want to let Washington, D.C. run elections. The Constitution affords no authority for the Vice President or anyone else to reject votes or return votes to the states. Never been done before, should never be done in the future. I'm sorry, ma'am, but that's actually what the Constitution says. President Trump was wrong about my authority that day, and he's still wrong.
A little difficult to hear that exchange, but as we discussed yesterday, Vice President Pence there rebutting the argument that he had the power on January 6th to overturn the results of the election, and as the woman put it there, the voter, send it back to the state. So on Morning Joe yesterday, our panel questioned whether Pence's answer would do anything to change the mind of a voter like the one he was speaking to there. Well, now we have our answer.
It becomes very difficult to figure out how do you convince them otherwise.
Right.
So the facts are what they are. Pence was very forthright, but did he actually convince her?
Right.
And that's the challenge, of course.
What do you think after hearing Mr. Pence's answer?
I believe he's a good man. I love the fact that he is strengthened by his faith. But I really do feel like he altered history.
Would you consider supporting Mr. Pence after listening to him today?
I would consider it, but he has that one hiccup.
He has that one strike against him, Eugene Robinson. That seems to be the sense of the voter there, the woman in Sioux City, Iowa, who sat and listened to Vice President Pence patiently explain why he did not have the power to do what she suggests he had to do. But it speaks to the power of everything voters like her and supporters of Donald Trump and people who watch certain news networks and listen to certain podcasts and read certain websites have been told that he let them down that day, that Donald Trump has told them that it was, in fact, Mike Pence's fault that Joe Biden is president.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that it's almost not just a matter of fact for that voter, it's a matter of faith. And it's like trying to change someone's faith, trying to convince her of something that she just simply does not believe at her core. And that is an enormous challenge. You can call the Trump following cult-like. I've called it cult-like, but it is unquestioning and unwilling in many cases, in the case of many voters, unwilling to listen to any evidence to the contrary, evidence contrary to the thesis that Donald Trump is the savior of America. And how do you combat that? None of the Republican hopefuls seems to have an answer.
Jonathan Lemire, we've seen this before in covering Donald Trump and his supporters. We've seen it in our own lives where you have to patiently say to someone, no, the voting machines were not controlled by a satellite in Italy or by thermometers that Chinese government officials had tapped into. But that seems to be beside the point, doesn't it? That they take it as an article of faith that the election was stolen from them and that anybody who participated in keeping Donald Trump from being reelected is against them, including Mike Pence, who was a heartbeat away from being president and stood by Donald Trump's side for all 4 of those years, right up to the end.
This moment encapsulates where the Republican Party is right now in 2023. That Donald Trump's grip on the party, he's brainwashed so many of Republican voters that they choose to believe their own set of facts, that Vice President Pence can look that woman in the eye and explain very reasonably, very patiently, very kindly, but very forthrightly that I didn't have the power to do that. The Constitution does not let me do it. And she simply wouldn't believe him and will hold it against him and likely will withhold her vote for him because of it. And Jen Palmieri, it is every so often, we're in this every day, so it's easy to lose sight sometimes of the big picture. You know, I don't want to get into the habit of quoting myself, but I'll say, like, I wrote the book entitled The Big Lie, but the final sentences of the book are the idea that the big lie is dogma now for the Republican Party. It's who they are. It is who they are. Either they actually firmly believe it, or at least they pay lip service to it, and it shapes everything they do, and it is clearly going to shape this year's election too.
It's a big lie that started with a lie back in 2015. That, you know, may be a good bookend. So to the line from your book, I remember the escalator when Trump came down, and that day in June of 2015, announced for president, and he said. Talked about immigrants coming in, about Mexican immigrants coming in. He's like, they're rapists, they're murderers, and some I suspect are good people. I heard that and I thought, wow, what a craven political thing to say, to do that kind of gross race baiting. And I spoke with a Republican strategist later at the end of the election from another campaign, not Trump, and said that they realized in retrospect that they lost the primary on that day because what they heard from a lot of voters was, wow, Donald Trump was willing to tell the hard truth about something. He was willing to say that some of these immigrants are coming over are rapists and murderers. No one else has the courage to do that. And if he's willing to say that, that's on my mind too. I'm going to hang in there with him for anything. And it's like that started to create a relationship with his base where they think, you know, and I hear this parroted back to me all the time. He says what I think, that they're going to find a way to make whatever fact out there in the real universe that doesn't comport with what they believe, they're going to find a way to believe what they want to believe based on what Trump tells them, because that connection they feel to him is so strong.
And that moment is what these other Republicans running against Donald Trump are up against, that kind of loyalty, that kind of faith in him.